In this video, we're going to talk about Sam Raimi's film, The Quick and the Dead. Now, this is one of my favorite Westerns. This is a revisionist Western. We have an anti-hero as opposed to a traditional hero. But this is also one of the great existential Westerns, and that's what I love about it. So, we follow this character, played by Sharon Stone. She's initially just called the Lady, but we later find out her name is Ellen. I kind of wish we hadn't. I kind of wish that in the vein of like Clint Eastwood's Man with No Name characters, she had just remained the Lady, or the Bride in Kill Bill, for instance. I wish we hadn't had a real name, but it is what it is. They made that choice. So we've got the Lady who starts out, I can't even remember the guy's name because he's not really that important a character. I think, because I'm looking down the cast list here, I think his name is Simp Dixon, but I'm not 100% sure. It's just this completely non-contextualized opening. You have this dude out digging for gold in the desert, gold that he's presumably buried. The Lady rides up on him. He shoots her off her horse, goes over to check on her to make sure that she's dead, at which point she bashes him with her gun, chains him to a wagon wheel, rides off on his horse, stealing his hat. And she rides off and he is vowing vengeance. He's screaming, "I'll kill you, I'll kill you." I love it. I love that opening because it just, what the fuck is going on? Who is this guy? Why is any of this happening? What is their relationship? It seems like they have some kind of backstory, some kind of relationship, but it is not explained. The film doesn't care about it. It only becomes relevant at all because later on he shows up in this town that she goes to, this town of Redemption, which is a kind of heavy-handed signal, kind of heavy-handed name. Wish they hadn't done that, but they did it. It is what it is again. So he gets to this town of Redemption where the Lady is, and he eventually, he challenges her to a gunfight. At which point she shoots him. So, But, so that's getting a little bit ahead of things. But my point is, this is a great sort of weird, absolutely uncontextualized opening where a thing just happens. And the film feels no compulsion to explain to us why this thing has happened, which I think is absolutely amazing for this type of Man with No Name style existential Western, right? So, the Lady gets to this town. We see the burned down marshal's office, but then we get to the town itself. And this is a fairly standard sort of Western movie town. You got some scummy dudes and whatnot in the hotel and the saloon and things like this. You've got the prostitutes in the brothel. You've got various general stores and whatever. Standard Western stuff. What we find out is that John Herod played extremely well. Actually, all the acting in this is quite good. Played extremely well by Gene Hackman. John Herod is a former-ish outlaw, now basically mayor, sort of this town. He is in charge of the town. The blind boy, who's just credited as the blind boy, tells the Lady that John Herod gets 50 cents out of every dollar in this town, And when she asks what the town gets, he says it gets to live. So Herod clearly rules over this town with an iron fist. The fact that his last name is Herod probably should not be super surprising here. If we think about the biblical Herod or Herods, we had actually two Herods in the Bible. We have father and son. But these are autocratic rulers who commit tremendous acts of violence in order to maintain their power. John Herod is in that same vein. Again, there's some heavy-handed stuff here, so... So, John Herod runs this town, and he has announced a quick draw contest. Basically, people can come, they can sign up. If they think they're fast with a gun, they can win, I think it's $173,000, courtesy of John Herod and Wells Fargo. In the 1880s, early 1880s, I think when this is set, that's a massive amount of money. That's a good amount of money today. Probably not worth dying for today, but in the 1880s, that was, wealth beyond the dreams of avarice, basically. So clearly, John Herod's got a shit ton of coin. So he puts up this money. He and Wells Fargo, I guess, put up this money. And basically the idea is that throughout a series of days, each person in the contest will fight one duel. So initially, the lady fights Dixon because he challenges her. The Swede Goodson, fights Fee, known as the Kid, who's Herod's son, played, again, really, really well by Leo DiCaprio, a very young Leo DiCaprio, before he became the sort of big heartthrob that he later would become. And then Foy, who's a sort of minor henchman of Herod, fights Court, played by Russell Crowe. Court is kind of an interesting guy. Court had been an outlaw who had ridden with Herod. They'd done a lot of violence together. They'd made a lot of money together. But then when Herod forced Court to murder a priest who had given them shelter after a robbery that went wrong, Court abandoned the outlaw life and becomes a priest. This apparently just enrages not just Herod, but everybody in this town. Like, it is an irrational anger that this town has against Court for becoming a priest and refusing to do violence. Like, it makes sense with Herod because, like, this was his protege. This was his dude. His like, the guy who was going to take over from him, etc., etc. And so Court has kind of betrayed that loyalty. But the rest of the town just hates him. Like, they throw stuff at him. They're constantly just screaming abuse at him. And it doesn't make that much sense. I mean, a lot of the people in this town are Mexicans, and we know that at least some of them are Catholic because we see Catholic iconography from them. We have this one scene where a woman is just like praying with her crucifix on a beaded chain. Clearly prayer beads. Yeah, it doesn't make that much sense. But it's just this bizarre thing that happens, and the film seems to feel no compulsion to provide an explanation. And that's one of the things I love about this movie, is there's just a bunch of shit that happens, and it's weird, and it's not explained. The movie's just like, yeah, whatever, people hate him. Get used to it. And we just have to accept that. And that's kind of great, in a way. So I think all of that stuff contributes to the sort of existential interest of this movie, because again, it is this weird space in which stuff just happens. And it's not explained, it's not justified, it just is. And that really kind of aligns with the theater of the absurd element, which you get in a lot of existentialist literature, where things just occur. But the other element is this quick draw contest, right? It's a terrible idea to sign up for the quick draw contest. You know statistically that there's an extremely high likelihood that you're going to get killed, and you know statistically that there's an extremely low likelihood that you're going to win. And yet people do it anyway. Like, sure, you've got some people who are very successful or think they're likely to be very successful. Swede Goodson is the Swedish champion, so he has a reasonable expectation that he could win, but apparently he's not that good. Because the kid, again played by Leo DiCaprio, very, very good, very interesting, entertaining character, defeats him easily. We find out the kid is Herod's son, who basically just wants Herod's approval. And Herod's like, you're a farmer. You're not really a gunfighter. But the kid is good. The kid is very, very good. He's very fast, and he's very accurate with a gun. But then we've got these other people. So, like, some of the people who sign up are just, like, random townspeople or Mexicans or whoever it is, and they don't even get names. We only see them literally getting shot. Like, there's a couple of Mexicans, there's an African-American, there's 3 or 4 white guys who just, no names, just dead. That's all they're there for. Terrible idea to sign up for this. You got some people who are faster and some people who actually win their first or even their second fight. Still, statistically bad decision to sign up for it. And it doesn't, it's kind of an insane thing to even host. Like, why would Wells Fargo put money into this? It doesn't really make any sense in the real world, but it's a premise for this film. And I think that sort of absurdity, that insanity of, we're going to have a quick draw contest where most of the losers are going to die, is really an interesting premise. And again, the fact that it doesn't make that much sense is one of the things I find so fabulous about this movie. Now, there's a whole other element to the storyline that I haven't talked about, which is Ellen's backstory, the lady's backstory. I don't find it that interesting. We learned that her father had been the marshal in this town. Herod and his gang had ridden into town, put him up on a stool with a noose around his neck. Herod had shot out most of the legs of the stool, and then given her the gun with the last 3 bullets, and said, if you can shoot the rope, your dad can live. She shot him in the head, and so that was her backstory. Did we need it? For me, I don't think so. I don't think it adds much to the movie. I think it undercuts the sort of absurdity of so much of what's going on, which is what I love about it. I can see why they did that, because just having everything be completely sort of arbitrary and pointless is probably not going to go over well in terms of getting people to give you money for a movie. But, you know, it is what it is.